Back to our top story. We have a senior Justice Department official. His name is Bruce Ohr. He was demoted because of his ties with Fusion GPS. That, of course, the firm responsible for the dirty Russian anti-Trump dossier bought and paid for by Hillary and the DNC. And Sarah Carter reporting tonight that the House Intel Committee Chairman, Deven Nunes, is going to issue a subpoena for this demoted Justice Department official. Now, joining us now with more on this developing story from the Hill, John Solomon, investigative journalist, Sarah Carter, Fox News legal analyst, Greg Jarrett. We got to, Sarah, start with where we are here. And it's not just him. Rumors tonight running rampant of a major shakeup coming to the FBI, possibly as early as tomorrow.
Yeah, certainly that's right, Sean. That's what I've been hearing as well from my sources. We know now that Bruce Ohr, as reported by James Rosen, he was demoted from Deputy Attorney General, and now he's facing a subpoena by the House Intelligence Committee, and that should be issued in the next couple of days. They are issuing that subpoena. It hasn't happened today yet. It's going through the process right now, so within the next day, possibly even as soon as tomorrow, they should have that subpoena issued. And now we're also looking at other developments. I mean, we know that Bruce Ohr had met with Christopher Steele prior to the election, and then after the election, he met with Glenn Simpson, who is the owner of Fusion GPS, who, by the way, paid Christopher Steele with the money from the DNC and Hillary Clinton to fund the rest of the dossier, the salacious, unverified dossier. So right now, what the Intelligence Committee chairman wants to know is, why did he meet with him? What did they discuss? And why did he meet with Glenn Simpson? And what did they discuss after the election? This is really big news. They say this is big, big news, maybe even bigger than Peter Strzok. All right.
That's just all great points you're making. And by the way, also the talk of, well, what did Rod Rosenstein know? What did I'd like to know what he knew. I'd like to know what Comey knew. I'd like to know what Mueller knew ahead of all of this. You know, a lot of questions, John, being raised about, okay, this team that literally has covered for Hillary Clinton and put all these biased people going after Donald Trump, you know, what would it take to get rid of a special counsel?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a high legal standard, right? You have to have one of three things usually. Misconduct. He has to have done something wrong in the investigation. A clear conflict of interest, and that's an area that could become very interesting in the next few weeks, or an abuse of power. It isn't just because people don't like the people he picked or the political sentiments of the people. To remove someone of that stature from this job, there has to be a very serious conflict, abuse of power, or misconduct. And to date, I don't think anything has emerged yet. There's a lot of concern
Seems like
about
we're getting very close, though.
Well, I think the conflict of interest thing is a thing we should watch. I think we're going to learn some new things in the next 2 weeks, Sean, that's going to raise questions on that front.
There are two conflicts of interest that could get Mueller fired. The first one is Mueller interviewed with the president for Comey's job.
The day before.
That's right. Then the next day he takes the job as special counsel. Think about that. Sitting across from the man who's posing questions, and Mueller is not telling the president. He's being dishonest and deceptive. And he's involved in the aftermath of the Comey firing, which is the subject of the special counsel investigation. That disqualifies him. It's mandatory under the law. The other is his close friendship, also a mandatory disqualification, his close friendship with Comey. Mueller has refused to resign or step aside. It's time that the Attorney General unrecuse himself, replace Mueller, and clean up this staff that is rife with political bias and corrupt motives.
Where are we, Sarah, on the issue of reports that Comey wanted to hire Christopher Steele? Did they pay Christopher Steele? And when you get to the whole dossier issue, the fact that Ohr knew all of that, and he's 4 doors down from Rod Rosenstein?
Well, it's incredible, Sean. And right now, well, today we know one thing, that Nunes has been cleared by the Ethics Committee. So for 8 months, they've sidelined the chairman of the Intelligence Committee on one question. I've talked to sources up in Congress that said this was incredible. This would have never happened in the past. But those are the questions that they want answers. and that's what they're seeking. So they will subpoena Bruce Ohr. They will ask these questions. They have already presented those questions to the DOJ. We know the Inspector General is investigating this, and these are the questions that the American public wants answered, as well as me, as well as John, everybody else, you. So there has to be some answer coming from the FBI, and especially from FBI Director Wray.
Are the House of Cards going to blow down?
I think so. And it's a shame, because there are so many highly qualified, experienced lawyers who don't have a political axe to grind that Robert Mueller could have selected. He did not do it. It was deliberate. It was by design. Instead, he stacked it with people with egregious political biases, people who, in one case, defended the Hillary Clinton Foundation, in another, defending her top IT aide. These are people who should be nowhere near this investigation of Clinton's opponent, Trump.
John, knowing all you know and what's likely coming, how bad does this get for Mueller?
You know, I think there's a very important question that hasn't been fully focused on about Peter Strzok, and that is he was in a counterintelligence position on two of the most important investigations of the last year, Trump and Clinton. Counterintelligence agents are the focus of foreign powers. He engaged in an affair, if the reports are true. What's the one way a foreign power compromises someone? Through sex and affairs? And then after it's revealed that he had an affair, and it was with a fellow FBI agent, the FBI department, which was talking about the integrity today, where did they put him? They put him in human resources, like he has some expertise on following the rules. It's amazing to me. I think there's more questions to be about whether he was in a compromised position because he had an affair.
It was epic at this hearing today. I mean, seriously, what the Republicans did is everything we've all been talking about. Is getting interesting. Thank you all. When we come.
Remember, the DOJ official recently demoted for concealing the fact that he met with Christopher Steele of the Dossier and also Glenn Simpson. But that wasn't the only thing that he didn't tell us about his ties to the anti-Trump dossier. The explosive connection to his closest family member. Next.
Lyrica.
Breaking tonight, exclusive new information obtained by Fox News shedding light on the politics of what is supposed to be an independent investigation into the Russian collusion question in the 2016 election. We were the first to break the news last week that Bruce Ohr, a man working at the highest level of the probe at the Department of Justice, was demoted shortly after Fox News asked about his ties to the anti-Trump dossier, ties that include a meeting with Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson, whose organization commissioned the dossier, also a meeting with Christopher Steele. And tonight, those ties appear to extend even deeper. We're learning that Ohr's wife worked for Fusion GPS during the campaign. So what to make of all this? Here now, Buck Sexton, former CIA officer, David Tafuri, former State Department official and Obama campaign foreign policy advisor. Welcome to both of you. David, let me start with you. You know, it's like a family tree, you know, and you keep extending it out. And Glenn Simpson's wife also had connections. There's all of these ties to the Clinton campaign. You have Andrew Weissman, who was at went to the party that was supposed to be her victory party that night. So how can these people be impartial when it comes to investigating either Hillary Clinton before the election or President Trump and his team during the campaign?
Well, it's important that Fox News did the investigative work to break this story, and congrats to you and to James Rosen. And this is an important story, and we need to get to the bottom of it. The latest information is particularly concerning because it suggests that Ohr's wife was working for Fusion GPS. That would suggest he had a conflict of interest under the DOJ guidelines. It could be both a financial conflict and a personal conflict because she was apparently being paid by Fusion GPS, and she also had an interest in supporting Fusion GPS. And so that's of concern. But we don't know exactly what Ohr's role was in the investigation. And it's also important to note now that the special counsel's office is operating separately from the Department of Justice, independently from the Department of Justice. So Ohr and whatever he was doing would not have influence over Mueller and the special counsel investigation.
But what is clear, Buck, is that, you know, there wasn't really a very big effort to choose people to do this investigation who would be completely above reproach, that there would be a conflict of interest. Sometimes that's all it is. It doesn't mean that you have any strong feelings or that you would act differently, but just that there's an appearance of impropriety that smacks of something that should not be part of the investigation. And it appears they made no effort to do any of that.
Martha, yeah, I think it's much worse. I think that what we see are a whole bunch of
pro-Clinton, anti-Trump partisans that have at key nodes, at key points in the investigation, whether it's of Hillary's emails or then of the interview with General Flynn and then with the Mueller special counsel probe, have been involved in ways that I think do raise a lot of questions. And once we start talking about the dossier specifically, there is still the possibility that much of what we are discussing when it comes to the Russia collusion probe could have been started by the dossier, which was opposition research paid for by Hillary and the DNC. And if, in fact, that was the basis for essentially weaponizing part of the intelligence community to engage in a counterintelligence investigation against a U.S. political campaign, that is a bombshell. And I think that's why you've seen some hesitancy on the part of the DOJ to come clean with some of this information. I mean, we should have known a long time ago if anyone tied to the dossier was also involved at the DOJ with the Mueller probe. This should not be news. And again, Fox News doing excellent work to unearth it.
I mean, David, that's the problem. I mean, and it looks terrible, right? It looks like all of these people were so concerned about a Trump presidency that they felt like they were doing something righteous to try to throw whatever roadblock they could in front of it, even if it meant paying for a dossier that turned out to be largely unsubstantiated, and using that as a way to investigate members of the campaign.
Well, let me correct something that Buck said. Buck said this started with the dossier. This did not start with the dossier. This started with the communications between the Trump campaign and Russia. Those communications happened, and we have evidence, irrefutable evidence of those communications.
Wait, what's the irrefutable evidence? I'd like to know. And how would you know what that evidence is?
Well, let me tell you. There are emails between Donald Trump Jr. and Wikipedia, which was serving as an agent of Russia.
Wikipedia puts online lots of information.
There were conversations between the Russian ambassador and the Trump campaign. There were meetings, including Kushner and Donald Trump Jr. Don't interrupt me, Buck. Let me finish. There were meetings that happened. All of this there's irrefutable evidence of now. So it doesn't matter what the dossier says, because many of the things that are in the dossier are now becoming
You're mentioning Wikipedia and then WikiLeaks, and the WikiLeaks story that would have been evidence of some kind of collusion was just entirely debunked, much to the mainstream media's chagrin.
If it
were straightforward, as you just said it was,
that's not the Wikipedia story I'm talking about. I'm talking about the emails between Donald Trump Jr. and Wikipedia,
we don't know that they actually mean anything, but we got to leave it there, you guys. But I will have you back, I promise. Thanks, you guys.